Coming to the Tainted Tavern, come sit a while for free. We talk about our musings and devices we've been using.
Hello and welcome to the Tainted Tavern. I'm your landlord, Gary Dobbs, and today we're going to have a drink and we are going all cinema for our topic, and I want to talk about a couple of films from Universal Studios. That is 1931's Frankenstein, directed by James Whale and starring Colin Clive and Boris Karloff, or as Boris Karloff was billed in that film, question mark. And the 1935 sequel, The Bride of Frankenstein, again directed by James Whale rather, and again starring Colin Clive and Boris Karloff. Boris Karloff, probably the most iconic Frankenstein's monster ever. Now I've got these films on a DVD issue, which dates back to, and I've made some notes here so I can remember the actual date. So yes, the DVD I'm about to show you came out in 2004 when Universal released a lot of their classic horror films on really handsome sets with good special features, which is why I've still got the DVD and not upgraded to another format. They released them in 2004 to tie in with the upcoming release of the film Van Helsing, which they thought was going to kickstart the monster franchise again. Van Helsing's enjoyable enough, I suppose, in a limited way, to my opinion. I didn't really take to that film, but then I'm not really a lover of horror film as the entire genre, and most horror films, particularly modern horror films, leave me cold. But I've really got a soft spot for the old Universal classics, as well as the Hammer movies. I grew up on these. So here's the DVD set here, Frankenstein and The Bride of Frankenstein, 2-film double disc collector's edition. It's a really handsome package. Now Frankenstein and The Bride of Frankenstein are available on Blu-ray, but I've never seen the need to update because the special features on here are comparable, equal to the Blu-ray. And I believe Frankenstein, the 1931 original, has also got a 4K restoration. Not seen that, and it would be interesting to see that. But this DVD transfer is pretty good, and as you can see, this release here has got a sticker on here which I've never removed, and it says one of the classic films that inspired Van Helsing. So that's the reason that they were tied in. So it comes out, it's a slipcase there. Open it up and you get a really lovely booklet with the DVD. There's your 2 discs there, and there are special features on both discs. We get information about the film. For instance, Frankenstein, the earliest known film version of Frankenstein, was produced by the Edison Company in 1910. The film was eventually rediscovered and may be seen in part within Ken Brownlow's documentary Universal Horror, which is actually the documentary that's playing away behind me on my screen here. And there we've got the actor Elsa Lancaster, who is playing in this scene. This is a little opening to The Bride of Frankenstein, and this is supposedly Percy Shelley, when they had that famous dinner meet in Geneva, which they all decided to write their own ghost stories, and the 19-year-old Mary Wollstonecraft came up with Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus. Boris Karloff here with Jack Pierce, the makeup master who did his makeup. It also tells us then some information about The Bride of Frankenstein, which it says is loosely based on part of Shelley's original, played more in the humorous style displayed by Whale in 2 productions from the intervening years. Of course, James Whale, the director of both of these movies, a man who was openly homosexual, which was really unusual during the time. And that has led modern film critics to especially drag out the gay subplot from The Bride of Frankenstein. And whilst there is a gay subplot there, I think they make more of it than what it really is. Then of course we get biographies of each of the main players here. Boris Karloff, Colin Clive, who died in, I've made my notes of alcoholism. He died in 1937 due to complications over his alcoholism. And it's really, it's a nice little booklet. Now the special features on these DVDs, well worth talking about, because this is an excellent package. I've also got the package of Dracula and the Wolfman, and I think I've got another package which has got the Mummy and the Creature from the Black Lagoon. But special features on this one, that's Frankenstein, are the Frankenstein Files, a feature commentary by Rudy Beamer, Frankenstein Archives, Boo, which is an interesting short movie, it's strange, and a theatrical trailer. And on the second film, The Bride of Frankenstein, the special features are She's Alive, which looks at the creation of the Bride of Frankenstein, a feature commentary with Scott McQueen, The Bride of Frankenstein, a documentary on an archive, showing archive pictures. We've also got then a theatrical trailer, and this also includes Van Helsing theatrical trailer, which was of course a Stephen Sommers directed film, released in 2004 and starring Hugh Jackman as Van Helsing. So anyway, that's Frankenstein and The Bride of Frankenstein. I'm going to talk a little bit about these films now. What I really love about these films is the style of these films. I mean, it was early in Hollywood's age, and when Frankenstein came out in 1931, Universal were not exactly in the black, as it were. They were in financial trouble. But Frankenstein, I've made a note here, made Universal 12 million on its first release alone, and it's made them many times that over the years. Let's have a sip of my Hazy Jane Pale Ale. Now, another thing that these films can be seen as is, these days it's quite common to see a sequence of movies living in a shared universe. Some recent examples of this would be the Marvel universe and the DC universe. But Universal, I wouldn't say they were one of the first purveyors of this. I don't think they actually did it first, but they were one of the first purveyors of this. And the sequels to the Frankenstein movies served as sequels to, apart from The Bride of Frankenstein, I'll explain that in a minute, but the other sequels served also as sequels to Dracula and the Wolfman. So we had Frankenstein in 1931, then came Bride of in 1935, and this was followed up by Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman in 1943, which saw Frankenstein, of course, and the Wolfman combined. Then we had House of Frankenstein, which went one step further, so we had Frankenstein, the Wolfman, and Dracula. Then we had House of Dracula, which is ditto, did a similar thing, bringing all the monsters apart. And then, just when the genre was ripe for self-parody, we had Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein in 1948. Now, as I was saying about the performances in this movie, it is so theatrical. Colin Clive gives a wonderful manic performance, and where film acting and theatre acting is sometimes film acting is a lot smaller than theatre acting. It's not so big, it's not so pushy out there. Colin Clive portrays Henry Frankenstein in these movies almost as if he's in a stage play, and his manic delivery of the line, "It's alive! It's alive!" It's absolutely superb, and that line was voted by the AFI, that's American Film Institute, one of the 100 best lines in the entirety of movie history. Now, let's go to the director, James Whale, an Englishman who was openly homosexual, as I say, which was very rare during the period. And he was very influenced by the work of the German expressionists, and he was particularly influenced by Paul Lenny, a German expressionist filmmaker, and he brings a lot of that to Frankenstein. The sets in these movies are superb. Another interesting thing I would say about Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein is this is perhaps one of the only rare occasions where a sequel, if not better, if not superior, is at least equal to the original. There are a few examples, Godfather and Godfather Part 2. A lot of people claim that Godfather Part 2 is actually a superior film to Godfather Part 1. Don't know if I totally agree with that, but it's definitely equal. And to go off on a tangent a minute, back in the late 70s, BBC One, I think it was, showed a version of Godfather 1 and Godfather Part 2 combined, but they put it in proper chronological order. So the film opened with the Robert De Niro scenes from Godfather Part 2, and then went into the, played all of those scenes out, the prequel scenes, if you like, in Godfather Part 2 before going into the proper scenes from Godfather Part 1, and then it went straight through there, and of course brought in the present day scenes from Godfather Part 2, where Al Pacino has now taken over at Don and he's consolidating the family's influence. That was a really brilliant, I'd love to see that version again. Anyway, I digress. We're here to talk about Frankenstein and the Bride of Frankenstein. Now, the sets used in both of these films are very gothic, but they are also heavily influenced by German expressionist cinema. They are absolutely wonderful films. I mean, take Frankenstein. This was released in 1931. So this soon, in what, 6 years, will be 100 years old. Think of that, a movie that is 100 years old. None of the cast or crew can be alive, so you are effectively watching ghosts trapped in sunlight, or trapped in light. At least sunlight is a bit too poetic, but that's all film is, isn't it? It's captured light. So you were actually watching ghosts trapped in sunlight. And let's talk about Boris Karloff and his performance as the monster. Absolutely wonderful. And the makeup, which was done by Jack Pierce. Jack Pierce, you'll be able to Google him if you're unfamiliar with him. And he was considered one of the true great makeup artists of early Hollywood. Got Ray Bradbury here talking on the documentary that's playing away behind me about his love of the Universal horror films. Now, Colin Clive, to go back to Colin Clive, as I say, he died of complications relating to his alcoholism. James Whale, the director, was openly homosexual. There are suggestions that Colin Clive was, if not homosexual, then at least bisexual. But James Whale committed suicide in 1957 by drowning himself. Although he did leave a suicide note, although an ex-lover concealed the suicide note for a great many years, and it was believed to be accidental death, but he did eventually release the suicide note. And there's one line which I find incredibly touching in the suicide note, written by James Whale, and it says, "The future is just old age and illness and pain." You can have a great film to watch if you're unfamiliar with James Whale and you haven't seen it. It is 1998's Gods and Monsters, directed by Bill Conti, which looks at the making of, in particular, The Bride of Frankenstein and James Whale's life. It's a really interesting film. But these films are absolutely brilliant to watch. I mean, they're not gore-filled spectacles as modern horror films are, but they're all the more effective for it. They rely on story, characterization. The characters are brilliant throughout. Boris Karloff's portrayal of the monster, this hideous-looking creature created from the dead parts of others. It's incredibly effective. He's so nuanced and he's wearing all this heavy makeup, but he managed to do acting with his eyes, which were mostly covered by heavy eyes. He managed to be so expressive with his eyes. I've got a lot of time for these films. I do regard these as classics. I think everyone does who knows anything at all about cinema. They would regard these as classics. I said earlier that Bride of Frankenstein may be one of the few examples where a sequel is actually equal to the original. I do stand by that. There are many who consider Bride of Frankenstein to in fact be superior, but I think Bride of Frankenstein brought in a lot more comedy and a lot more humour into it, although the comedy wasn't over the top. It was kind of absurdist comedy. There's a character in The Bride of Frankenstein who works with Henry Frankenstein to revive his creation, which we thought was destroyed in the first movie. Dr. Pretorius, and he's created his own little humans, and they're in little bell jars, and you see these three or four little miniature characters in these bell jars who they play out their own little scene. There's a lot more comedy in The Bride of Frankenstein, and it is a lot more camp. And if there is an homosexual subtext in these movies, then it is mostly evident in Bride of Frankenstein. The relationship between the Frankenstein monster and the hermit, which is a very touching relationship, the way that they share a domestic life before the monster is discovered and driven away again because of the fear of the other. It's kind of charming. That could be read as almost a gay marriage, if you like. Fantastic movies, absolutely brilliant, and have stood the test of time. It's going to be interesting in 1931, in 2031, 6 years' time, to see what fuss there will be made for Frankenstein's 100th anniversary. I watched both of these films the other night. As I say, you can get Blu-ray versions, which will have a better resolution, but the DVD transfers, the original DVD transfers, I think, are more than good enough for these films. Don't forget, these are age films, but played on a modern DVD player, and I use a 4K DVD player, Panasonic, not an expensive model, but it's a decent enough model, and it does upscale DVD slightly. And the oldest one here, of course, 1931's Frankenstein, looked absolutely superb on my 50-inch television with the sound bar providing adequate sound. It's a brilliant viewing experience. I really enjoyed it. Bride of Frankenstein looks even better because there's only 4 years between them, but it had slightly more money, a bigger budget, and so the DVD transfer of that really brings out a vibrancy that the original lost. The sets were better in The Bride, even though a lot of them were repeated from Frankenstein. The sets were a lot better. There was more money to spend on there, and it does show on the screen. But both of these films are absolutely excellent. And if you can track down this DVD issue, DVDs now go for next to nothing, don't they, in second-hand shops and things like that. You could probably pick this up for £1 or two over here in the UK, and certainly not much more than a couple of dollars in the US, but of course you can. I think the special features on here are exactly the same as featured on the Blu-rays. I just don't see any need of upgrading from this DVD edition because Universal did an absolutely top-mark job on the original release of this Frankenstein and The Bride of Frankenstein. Let me just, before I go, let me just show you a couple more that I purchased at the time in this collection. So bear with me 1 second. I'm going to run over there to my Tutankhamun DVD cabinet, and I'm going to bring them over. But with the magic of camera, it'll be almost instantaneous. So, okay, this one here is Dracula and House of Dracula. Dracula, of course, is the Bela Lugosi classic, and I will be doing a film video on this because this deserves to be spoken about as well. It's the same set as the Frankenstein, so the special features are equally good. You've got, for instance, The Road to Dracula, feature commentary by David J. Scal, new music by Philip Glass, performed by the Kronos Quartet, production photographs, theatrical trailer. The House of Dracula then hasn't got so many special features, but then that's not as important a film really as Dracula, and of course Bela Lugosi didn't play Dracula in the House of Dracula. That went to John Carradine. I've also got The Wolfman and Werewolf of London, which again is packed with special features. The Wolfman features Monsters by Moonlight documentary. It's got a feature commentary by Tom Weaver. It's got the Wolfman Archives, which shows some wonderful contemporary photographs from the time on set, theatrical trailer, and The Werewolf of London then just features the Van Helsing theatrical trailer. Both great films. Wolfman, of course, Lon Chaney is my favourite. Lon Chaney's Wolfman the Wolfman itself is often seen as a lesser monster in Universal's canons when compared to Frankenstein and Dracula, but I really love Lon Chaney Jr.'s performance of Larry Talbot. There's supposedly a Welshman in the film, and his doomed sad eyes. I'm going to talk about that for one day. I've also got then The Mummy and Creatures from the Black Lagoon. This is this was originally released in the slipcase in this set, but this is a later edition in a standard DVD case. But this is interesting as well. On The Mummy, you've got Mummy Dearest, an original documentary. You've got a commentary from film historian Paul Jensen. There are posters and stills, and a theatrical trailer. Back to the Creature from the Black Lagoon is also a very good disc with special features. Is Back to the Black Lagoon, which is an original documentary. You've got a commentary from film historian Tom Weaver, and then I've got some more vanilla discs with a few little special features, but these are later films and they're not as good in the sequel. They're okay, they're entertaining enough, I enjoy them. We've got House of Frankenstein there, and we've also got Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. So, absolutely excellent. That's Universal Creature Features, Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. Cheers. Yaki da. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Tell me, are you a fan of these classic horrors?
Come into the Tainted Tavern, come sit a while for free. We talk about our musings and devices we've been using.